Alright guys, so my diff is finally here from Japan, as well as the brace for the rear subframe, so I'm just going to go ahead and unbox them right now. I'm not putting them in yet, that'll happen sometime this weekend probably, but this will be the same video for you, so it doesn't really matter. But we're just going to unbox them, see what they all look like, see what's in the box, and then go from there. Alright, so here we got the Torsen differential from 97 Miata I picked up a while ago. So this is the Type 2 Torsen, so it does not have half shafts. The axles are one piece, just go straight into here. I read that those were stronger, so I wanted to get one for my track car, just more strength, you know, it's not going to hurt anything. So we're going to start by draining this, taking the housing apart, get the Torsen differential out, install the OS Geiken LSD into there. Swap the bushings. I do have poly bushings for these because these ones are very much shot. I can move them with my finger. So go ahead, get it drained, and then start taking stuff apart. Alright, so the lower drain plug, I'm just going to remove that at the 24mm socket, drain it out, take out the other fill plug as well, just so it'll drain out nicer and I'll be able to clean everything better. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so we just got this diff opened up, got the housing cracked open. And there is water inside it, almost absolutely zero diff fluid, so I don't know how that got in there, but since I'm swapping the diff out anyway, I shouldn't have damaged anything. So I'm glad I'm swapping it out for a different one. Probably not in the best of shape. Alright, so now that it's all drained, I'm just going to start taking off the bolts for the housing here, get that taken out. That way we can see what it looks like on the inside of here. Oh, it's welded. Look at that. You can't. What the heck? Dude. That doesn't hurt anything I'm trying to do, so good for me. But interesting. Thought this was a Torsen. This ain't no Torsen. So I just got it out. There was actually one of the sleeves for the power plant frame bolts I had to bang out real quick. But while I was doing that, the housing fell off and I found this is actually a welded open diff. You can see all the welds on the spider gears in there. This is not a Torsen LSD, as I was led to believe. Not that it matters, I'm swapping one in anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It's just kind of interesting because I thought this whole time it was a Torsen, but it's just a welded open for mad skids. So that's all done. I got the housing sitting over there, just draining out. There was a lot more water in it. I really don't know how that got in there, but we're going to clean everything up really well before we put it all back together. So we'll go ahead and start pulling out this welded open diff and get ready to clean it all up, paint it, and swap in the OS Geiken. Alright, so we got it all set up here. I'm just going to start by taking off these bearing caps, just get everything all cleaned up, and we'll be able to get this welded open diff out of here. Alright, so there's our welded open diff removed from the housing. I'm going to go ahead and take the ring gear off, all these big bolts right here, get the bearings off, and then swap them onto the new one. got that old welded open diff out and separated from the ring gear. So now I just have to get the bearings off of here to put on my new OS Geiken diff, clean everything up, get everything all clearanced and everything cleaned up, all the thread locker taken off and replaced and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead hit everything with a bunch of brake cleaner, get it all cleaned up, and then we'll start swapping everything to the new OS Geiken diff. Alright, so we got the welded open diff right here. I'm just trying to figure out how to get these bearings off. I'm just going to try like tapping them. I'm pretty sure they're press on, so I'm just going to go ahead and start messing with how to get these off without breaking them, so I can swap them onto my new OS Geiken over there. Alright, so upon further inspection, the axle bearings on the welded open diff I took out have a ton of play in them. You can just see how much it moves right here. I mean, they are 20 some odd years old, so figured I was going to reuse these on the OS Geiken diff, but I went ahead and ordered some new ones, so they'll be here tomorrow. So this is going to be on hold for a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and continue cleaning up the housing, the carrier, and everything. I have to get the bushings out because I have polyurethane bushings from my propane kit put in there, and I want to paint everything up, make it look nice and fresh again. So we're going to go ahead and get started with removing those diff bushings. Alright, so I'm about to take these bushings out. I'm just going to burn them out because it seems like the easiest way for me. There's some welding going on over there, so sorry for that, but whatever. So I'm just going to start burning these so they melt out, and then tap out the rings, get all the carriers out, clean it all out, and then we can put in the new poly ones. So I got these poly bushings installed. To get the old ones out, I had to take them to my dad's work and use an actual press to get them out, just because they were really stuck in there, and 20-year-old rubber. So, but we got these in. These just pressed in by hand, and then I have the other pieces for the subframe in my room right now. And then I also got this all cleaned up inside. I figured while I was here, I may as well replace the seals for the axles. So I got some new ones of those. We're just going to pop those out. Then we can start installing the bearings I got on the new LSD differential, and then we'll be good to go to finish putting it all together. Alright, so when I was knocking this one out, I actually damaged the aluminum a little bit on the housing. It's not that big of a deal. I'll just sand it down. Probably put a little RTV gasket maker on it when I put it in, just to ensure it's not going to leak, which I was going to do anyway, so it's not that big a deal. I'm just going to sand that down, RTV the new ones, tap those in, and then we can move on to the LSD. So I got these seals in with a little bit of RTV just to make sure that for extra precaution that they don't leak. Now we're going to be able to get the LSD in. I just got to put those bearings on real quick. Then we go ahead and mount all that in the housing, get everything all torqued back on, tightened up, and I'll be able to paint the whole housing outside and then put it in the car. Alright, so here we have the OS Geiken clutch type LSD. I also picked up the new bearings for the axle. They just go on the end of the diff here. The old ones were like super sloppy, had like a full inch of play, so I decided not to reuse them. So we just got some new ones. I'm just gonna tap these on, get them all seated on there correctly, and then we will put all this into the housing, get the ring gear all torqued back on, and then we can seal it all up together. Alright, so I'm tapping these on. I was using this. It fits perfectly in the top of the bearing, but the top is already maxed out. It's flush up here, but there's still a little gap under there. This bearing needs to go down a little more to seat all the way onto the diff, and this won't go down anymore. So I was looking, I don't have a socket big enough. That's what everything I've seen is use a big socket to hit them on, but I don't have a socket that big. So I was going to try using a big crescent wrench. I can open it enough to where it sits on the bearing, but it'll still go over the shaft on the differential, and then just tap it from the top like that with the big end of the hammer and see if I can get it to go down enough till the bearing seats onto there. What the heck? So we got both bearings pressed on all the way. I had to try a couple things to get it on there because the differential actually sits a little higher than the bearing when it's fully seated. But we got it on there. I ended up using like the box end of a wrench to get it on there, but it worked. Everything's all good. I got the races just sitting on here just so nothing falls around because they loosened up a little bit, but nothing too bad. They get crimped in anyway using the like C-clamp things, and they're all torqued onto spec. So we're just going to get this installed into the housing tonight probably. Get the ring gear all torqued on and everything like that, and then just maybe get the housing RTV'd and closed up, and then let that dry for like 24 hours or so, and then put the sealant in there, and then fill it up with the OS Geiken diff fluid. Alright, so all the bearings are done. We're getting ready to install the ring gear. I just got it sitting on here. I just wiped it all down, had a bunch of old fluid on it. So I've looked up the torque for the ring gear bolts at 65 foot-pounds. So I'm just going to put some red thread locker on there. They said to use high temp, so that's what I got. We'll put that on there, we'll get it in there, get it all torqued on, and then get to installing the diff into the housing. So the ring gear is torqued onto the OS Geiken LSD. It's all torqued onto 65 foot-pounds for the ring gear bolts. So now we're just going to pop that into the carrier here, get all the bearing caps on, torqued on, all the adjuster screws and everything. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So that's all in. I just got the bearing caps hand tight for right now. I'm going to go get these torqued to spec, then we'll adjust the little tensioners on either side here, then we'll put those adjuster lockers in, whatever you want to call those. So we'll just go ahead, get these torqued. We're going 38 foot-pounds on these. So we got the OS Geiken LSD fully installed in the housing. I'm not going to get to putting the carrier on and everything right now, but we got the ring gear torqued on, and then we put the bearing caps on. Everything's torqued up there. These are 38 foot-pounds. All that stuff I was just doing was adjusting the backlash and the bearing preload, just to make sure there isn't a lot of movement in the diff, and then just so the gears aren't too tight with the pinion or anything. So that's all done. Everything's tightened up. I just put the little lockers on, so everything's all set. So when we continue this, I just got to get the old RTV off, throw everything together, RTV it on, let it dry, and then fill it up with some fluid. Okay, so now that the diff is all preloaded and backlashed and everything, I'm just going to clean the old RTV off, then we'll be able to throw that together with some RTV, get it all painted up nice, and then throw it into the car. Alright, so we're ready to put the diff into the housing. I got all the RTV cleaned off, so I took the bushings out because I'm going to paint it, and I didn't want to paint them, I want them to stay red, so I'm just going to go ahead, get that lined up, get it in there, and then start torquing down the bolts, 10mm bolts in a star pattern, just to make sure everything is tightening out correctly and like not getting bound up crooked left ways or right ways. Okay, so the housing's all together. You got RTV on there. That's supposed to dry for 24 hours before we put fluid in, so we won't get to that today. But I got the seals all covered up with some rags. I'm just going to throw some black spray paint on it so it looks all new and fresh and clean and not like it's 20 years old. So go ahead and do that, let that dry overnight, and then we'll be able to put the fluid in and get it into the car. Alright, so the diff is all painted, we're ready to start putting it in the car. I have that sitting over there behind you guys. We just got it sitting on a jack, gonna jack it up into position. Right here we just have OEM axles. All the stuff I was reading for the power I want to make, I can use OEM axles and not have any problems with the joints or anything blowing out. I'm not gonna mess with that. Then I have the OEM subframe brace, that'll just go on at the end. And then these, I just had to order these. These are the bushing plates from the OEM bushings that you're supposed to have. I didn't realize you needed these, so I had to order some of these real quick. But we got these now, so let's go ahead. We'll start jacking the diff up and getting it up into position, then start bolting everything in. Alright, so the diff's all jacked up and hand tightened in. I put a little never seize on the bolts as well, just to make sure they don't get stuck over time. So now I'm just going to go ahead and torque those in there, then we'll work on getting the axles in. The spec on the single center bolt is 70 foot-pounds, and then the two little outer ones on each side are around 20-ish. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll work on getting the axles in. Alright, so the differential's all torqued in, everything's up to spec, it's all in there secure and everything. So now I'm going to start putting these axles in. It doesn't matter what side they go in, so I'm just going to start with the driver's side. I think I'm going to have to drop a control arm, or at least one half of a control arm, so I can move the hub out of the way to line everything up, but we're just going to experiment with that a little bit and see how it goes. Alright, so we just got that other one in and we're having a little trouble getting the ring right here to seat. There's this little retainer ring so the axles can't slide in or out. We're just having a little problem with that. Did a little Googling and stuff. Just grease this up really well, grease the splines and like the little grabber teeth, I don't know what these are called. And then you just take all the tension out of the CV boot like that, you tap it in with a hammer, it goes in super easy. I just put the axle nut on this end so I didn't damage the actual shaft or anything like that. So we're just going to go ahead and get this last side in, get the hubs installed, and then go on from there. Alright, so that worked really well. All the axles are in, the control arms are all bolted back up, the hubs are lined up. So now what I'm going to do to put the axle nuts on and torque those to like 200 whatever foot-pounds those are supposed to be, I'm just going to throw some wheels on the back, drop the rear end down, then torque those on while it's sitting on the ground so it can't roll or spin away or anything like that. So I'm just going to throw some wheels on, look up that torque spec, and then get those all done. Alright, so you just saw it almost fell over doing that. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw all 4 wheels on, just set it on the ground. Probably put like a block of wood on the wheel or something to keep it from rolling away. And then we'll torque those to 200. While it's down, I may as well check the fronts as well. So I'm just going to double check the torque on the front hubs. Then we'll put it back up in the air, take the wheels off, get all the bracing on, and then we should be all done. Alright, so the diff is finally, officially, all the way installed. Everything's all the way done. Everything's torqued on. All the axles are put in. Everything's torqued up to spec. All the axles are correctly seated. So we went ahead, we got the poly bushings in here for way less flex. Those are all torqued on, 70 foot-pounds in the middle and 20 on the outers. We got the axles in after fighting with getting those rings to seat for a little bit. Just got those tapped in with a hammer. That's all good now. There's one little issue I noticed is that on the driver's side, the axle boot is slightly touching the adjustment collar on my coilover, so I'm going to have to mess with that and move things around just so that doesn't tear up my boot right away. But other than that, we're all good. We did put the wheels on, got all the front hubs and rear hubs torqued up. I also put the dust caps on the front ones just because I hadn't done it yet. Then I punched in all the nuts, so they can't back off into those little slots on the hubs. So other than that, everything's all good. This diff is finally installed. It's working great. LSD is fine. You turn one way, the other one goes the exact same way. None of that open diff, reverse spin kind of stuff. So in our next video, we're going to work on getting all the bracing back on. I also have a flying Miata cannon brace we're going to be putting in here. That requires a little bit of modification, but it'll be fun. We'll get that all modded up in here. I've already done a little mock-up, and it's going to need some work, but we're going to have fun with that. So be sure to catch the next one, guys, and thank you for watching.